All right, you guys. Well, today I have for you this 2023 Honda Accord. See you on a little walk around here. This will be kind of an interesting review because I actually own a 10th generation Accord, 2020. So I have some interesting thoughts on this car that you might not hear from other car reviews. So stay tuned for that. I do really like the styling of this car. I think they definitely like cleaned up this back end a little bit. We'll pop the trunk. This is the key for it, by the way. It's a redesigned key. It's a little bit smaller, a little bit rounder, fits better in your pocket. But here's the trunk for it, and it's a decent size. You know, I'd say roughly the same as the old one. Still pretty spacious, and you do get a spare tire under here with your tools and everything. So yeah, pretty nice to have. Close up the trunk here. Try out these back seats really quick. And back seats are pretty roomy, you know, typical Honda Accord back seats. Plenty of space. You don't really get any amenities back here in this LX trim. You don't get like rear vents or ports or anything. You do get cup holders, but that's about it. We'll hop out here and we'll show you guys under the hood real quick. When you unlock the car, it has like a different chime to it than older Hondas. It sounds a little more like a Toyota chime to me. All right. And this is the 1.5 liter turbo paired to a CVT. Makes 192 horsepower and 192 pound-feet of torque. Pretty average numbers, you know, it's pretty powerful for the class. Not gonna win drag races, but still a nice, adequate, healthy amount of power. Everything is pretty exposed right here. It looks pretty cool. And you just get a lot of space in this whole engine bay. But we'll close up the hood here. I like this front end styling, although it does remind me of a Ford Taurus up here. Just like the way these headlights are kind of like slim and inset. And the grille is pretty stealthy looking, but I still think it looks decent. It still kind of looks like an Accord, but we'll hop in here. And this car is pretty new. Still has that new car smell to it. Has a little Honda welcoming chime. My 10th gen has that too. Although I noticed the chimes in this interior are a little bit louder than the old one. Just a little minor detail I noticed, but we'll start it up. Has a pretty quiet startup sound. This interior generally does feel pretty new inside, although I will say I kind of like my 10th gen a little bit better. There are things I like about the old one, and I'm not just saying that because I'm biased. They're just things I think the old Honda Accord does a little bit better than this one. I'll go into it a little bit more later on in the video, but one of those things is this interior. I find this interior, while it does feel like put together decently well, it looks just more bland than the old one. You got these kind of vents and they look pretty interesting, I will admit, but I find they don't add much to this interior. You got this center console and it's pretty much all hard plastic. Lots of plastic in here. Wasn't really expecting that. Like, you got this kind of like plastic material all over the dash, the center console. Even these like armrests are like kind of like plasticky material. It's slightly padded, but not much. You do get this center screen and the gauge cluster. Even this, I'm not the most impressed with. It has decent quality to it, but it's a pretty small screen. And for some reason, I just find myself liking the old screen better. Even though it wasn't full digital, this one just like doesn't really impress me that much. You can change some stuff in here, but it's not very customizable. All you can really do is like show your music, and that's pretty much it. One thing I do like about this center gauge screen, it shows like the car, a diagram of the car and like the lane lines when you're driving. And this car actually does a really good job of reading lane lines, I find. It also shows your brake lights and your turn signals in this little picture when they're on. Kind of funny. It's kind of entertaining to watch, to be honest. In this base LX trim, this screen isn't super great. For the upper trims, you get a much bigger screen, But in this one, it is pretty basic, I will be honest. Pretty much only shows your radio. I do believe it has Apple CarPlay in here, but if you go to menu, that basically just changes your car settings and not much else. So yeah, pretty basic screen in here. You do get a backup camera, which looks pretty good. It's a typical like Honda backup camera. Looks has clear resolution. You can change your view right there. You do get these climate controls. I find these controls don't feel quite as solid as the previous model. One thing I kind of miss is how the dials don't change color when you change the temperature like the old one had. And also, like, a weird issue I have is how the fan speed is in this little screen right here, because when you're actually using this dial, your hand blocks it. You can't really see it. You don't get any USB-A ports in here. You just get USB-C, and that's it. You do get your shifter for the CVT. It is just a standard shifter. You got sport mode and low gear. You do get an economy mode. You can also turn your auto start stop off with this button, which I usually do, because it's not the smoothest auto start stop. It kind of jerks when the car kicks on. You get your parking brake and your auto brake hold, and you do get a pretty big center console. I don't think it's quite as big as the last generation, but it's still pretty big regardless. And you do get a glove box. This is actually a pretty small glove box. Not a big deal though. Get your typical controls on the steering wheel, just volume, track, voice command. You do get your cruise control. It does have adaptive cruise control. I do notice these controls have a little more resistance than the old Accord. They just feel a little chunkier, a little heavier to use. But yeah, we'll get this car out on a drive. Just gonna talk about it here. So one thing you notice about this Accord is it drives like a Honda. It has like a zippy, peppy feel to it, I notice, when you drive it. It feels pretty light on the road. There are some things I like about this car and some things I don't like. I'm gonna be kind of comparing it to my 2020 Accord a lot in this video, just because I'm so familiar with the last generation, because I literally own one and drive one every day. And this car is you know, good in some areas but not so great in others. But I'll start with the good things for now. Good things I've noticed: this car is a lot quieter than the last generation. I noticed that pretty much right away. As soon as I got in this car, it was noticeably a lot quieter. Driving on the highway and stuff, you just don't hear a whole lot, which is pretty good. A lot of people complain about Hondas having high road noise, but they definitely toned it down in this one. It's like luxury car quiet, which is pretty nice. This 1.5 turbo is pretty decent to accelerate. Like I said, has good pep. It's not gonna win drag races, and it's not like a major thrill to accelerate. It doesn't give you some like really connected, like really fun feel. Try out some of the power right here. The CVT kind of saps some of the fun out of the experience, but it is a nice, like, sprightly, peppy engine in general. I noticed, like, this CVT, it feels a little bit awkward when you're starting off from a dead stop. Has like a slight delay, but then it kicks in pretty nicely. It's actually pretty responsive as far as CVTs go. I would probably rather have a traditional stepped automatic transmission in here, but the CVT, as far as CVTs go, it's not too bad. I notice when I drive this car, the body lines are definitely a lot flatter than the old one. You do get this like really flat front hood in front of you. And it might be like, that might be a strong point. It's definitely a little easier to see out of, I think. Not that the Accord was ever really difficult to see out of, but you just get like more clearer sight lines in this one, I find. So that is like a good point, I'd say. Back window is a little bit smaller than the old one, but still pretty good for a sedan. But some things I don't like about this car. For one thing, I find that it's more isolated from the road than the old Accord. Everything feels just like more disconnected, more assisted, more electronic. The old Accord had more of a connected feel, kind of more of like a muscular feel on the road. And this one I find is just a little bit dulled down for my liking. I'm a little bit disappointed, to be honest. Even the steering, you know, the steering, it has that typical like Honda linearity to it and precision to it. You know, Honda is pretty good at steering, but for some reason they dulled this one back, I feel like. It's just a little bit like slow to respond. And my 10th gen Accord, I can just kind of like flick it around on the road a little bit better. This one definitely just feels a little less inspiring. It's not that it handles bad at all. Like, it handles still pretty good for a mid-size sedan. For this new generation Accord, they discontinued the 2-liter turbo, which is what my car has. And that's pretty disappointing. They replaced it with like a hybrid that makes like 50 less horsepower and uses a CVT. The accelerator feels like a Honda, you know, it's really responsive, has really good feel to it. It's very linear. Each little input on the throttle makes you feel like you're doing something. The brakes are pretty touchy, also typical of Accords. I know my car has touchy brakes as well. These feel a little bit more touchy, I think just because this car is like brand new, practically. But they're very smooth as well, like a little bit smoother than other Hondas I've driven. Other Hondas can have like a hint of, you know, harshness in the brake pedal, I find, but this one feels a little bit smoother. But yeah, like I said, very quiet in here. That's probably the biggest difference I've noticed. In typical Honda fashion, everything is kind of in a nice spot. When I step on the pedals, it's really easy to switch between gas and brake. Steering point's nice and straight. You know, when you're going in a straight line, it does feel like pretty firm and pretty planted, which I like. The car feels like easy to manage. Really easy to manage, you know, typical Honda fashion. But I do definitely think they got rid of some of the sporty edge that it used to have. I'll take it around some corners and I'll kind of show you guys what I mean up here. This power is pretty good though for a base Accord. Once you like really kind of get on it, it is like pretty smooth and peppy in how it picks up speed. Try out this corner right here, see how it does. And you know, it does okay, but I definitely feel like it's just not as connected. It like just slightly, you know, just slightly. Not that it's bad or anything. It definitely handles pretty good. But when you're just comparing it to the old one, it just doesn't have that same thrill, like that same excitement to it. Try taking these corners right here. The steering does trace really well with corners and bends in the road, but the old one was like that too. Yeah, CVT, sometimes it does get slightly confused when you first go to start out. But once you hit that ideal rev range, it takes off pretty nicely. I do enjoy how intuitive it feels. I always like that about Honda cars, how they always, you know, feel nice and intuitive. They're more sporty, but also just like easy to drive. But we'll take this on the highway here. Gets up to highway speeds nicely. I do like this acceleration for only the base engine. It's pretty good. It's not like a thrill, not like some crazy performance thrill to accelerate, but it does get up to speed nicely. And yeah, it is quiet on the highway. There is some wind noise coming in through like right here. Other than that though, I will say it's definitely a little bit better than the last generation in that regard. Oh, we will take this exit here. Handles bumps pretty good. Ride quality is really good in here. We'll test out these brakes right here. All right, and they're pretty, as I said, they're pretty touchy, pretty responsive. As I said, pretty good body motions, pretty easy to control. Definitely, it's not a bad handling car. Definitely not. Try out some passing power here. All right. Passes pretty nicely, as you can see, pretty strong. Does get slightly wallowy when you're at like higher speeds, but the Accord was never like particularly a sports car. Even my car can get a little bit wallowy at times, so not gonna knock it too hard for that. Take this corner. And yeah, you know, linear steering, I do like how the steering feels nice and still in the corner. Like, it keeps the car on a nice, steady course. Another interesting thing I noticed is these mirrors. Pretty sure these are the exact same mirrors on the last generation. They look exactly the same. Only thing is they don't have blind spot warning in this LX trim. Kind of wish it had that. All right, you guys, well, that about covers my review on this 2023 Accord. Yeah, it's not a bad car. You know, it handles pretty good, pretty smooth on the road, pretty quiet, has a good ride to it, pretty good acceleration, but I just feel like it's missing the substance of the last generation. Maybe because mine was a 2.0T, I have kind of a different view on it. But this one, it just feels a little bit more isolated from the road. The steering is a bit dulled down, in my opinion. And this interior is a bit dulled down. It doesn't have the same, you know, nice color scheme the old one had. It doesn't really have the same nice materials that the old one had. You know, a lot of this is just kind of like single tone plastic in here. A bit of a mixed bag for me, to be honest. I don't want to say it's a bad car, but I just think they kind of made it more numb to appeal to the masses, which is what a lot of car companies do. For some reason, duller is better, and I don't really understand it, but that's kind of how it is, I guess. But we'll shut it off here, and we'll hop out. All right, thanks for watching, everyone.